Hello and welcome to the In Gaming Podcast, where I, Hardiman, along with my good friend and co host Destino Will, talk all things video games. You can catch us at 7 p.m. UK time every Tuesday on YouTube, Apple Music, and Spotify with a brand new episode.
We love to hear from our listeners, so please give us a shout with any questions, feedback, or suggestions, either in the comment section on YouTube or over on Twitter at In Gaming Podcast.
If you do enjoy today's show, then please like, subscribe, and share the podcast.
Without further ado, let's take a look at what's been going on this week in gaming. This week saw Sony announce, finally after much anticipation, their new three-tiered model of PlayStation Plus, which essentially envelopes PlayStation Now into one big service. I'll just quickly run down what each of the tiers are and what they offer. So PlayStation Plus Essential will basically be what PlayStation Plus is now. You get your two free games a month, you get your discounts, your cloud storage, your online multiplayer. It'll be the same price. So anyone who wishes just to continue as they are, that's what they can stick with. The next tier is PlayStation Plus Extra. So everything from the Essential tier. And it also includes a catalogue of up to 400 in PS4 and PS5 games, including hits from PlayStation Studios catalogue, as well as third-party games. So none of these have been announced yet, as far as I'm aware. And it also notes that the games within this tier are all downloadable to play as well. And then there's PlayStation Plus Premium, which is the top tier. So everything from the previous two tiers included, obviously. There's 340 additional games, which includes PS3 games, which will only be available by streaming, much like PS Now. Plus a catalogue of classic games from PS2, PS1, and PSP. They will be downloadable and streamable. Let's see. I think that's pretty much it. Customers can also use PC to stream the PS4 and PS5 games. And perhaps a slightly odd benefit of the top tier is time-limited game trials, which, depending on how you look at it, is kind of strange because it's like you get demos for the most expensive tier, but we can talk about that. So overall, I think it looks pretty good. I'm certainly willing to just shell out for the premium initially to see how good it is. Short term, it's made me decide not to purchase any more games in the next couple of months because there's a good chance they're going to be included. So that's where I'm at now. Obviously, that's probably why they've only announced it 2 months before it launches, because they didn't want people to take that mentality, say 6 months before the service launches. Yeah, I like the idea of sort of the 400 games, PS1, PS5 games. That's pretty sweet. Depending on what they are, they may already be ones that have been given away with PS Plus. Won't know until. Oh, actually, I'm just scrolling on the blog, and it does actually say at launch they plan to include the following. So it lists Death Stranding, God of War, Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Mortal Kombat 11, and Returnal. That's actually a pretty decent selection. I'm just trying to find the asterisks. All right. Oh no, the asterisks are all about foreign different markets. So yeah, I don't know. It seems pretty decent, and it'll add to my backlog, which isn't what I want, but should maybe save some money long term. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think from the off, what I was pleased to see was that Sony didn't take this opportunity to include a price hike, because I think this would have been, if they decided to, this would have been the moment that they do that. They say, in order to support the new PlayStation Plus tiers, we're going to have to raise the price in line with XYZ, which obviously at the moment is appreciated that they're keeping the price at the same, and that everything on top of that is relative to that original price, whereas obviously that would be increased had the base tier increased as well. I think, yeah, I think, as a PlayStation player, I think it's something that I'll go for, the extra tier. I'm not particularly interested in the premium because I don't I don't find myself playing a lot of PS3 games. I've got a gaming PC, so I tend to, if I'm playing games from that era, I'll play them on PC because there's more flexibility around graphics settings, maxing that out, having a better frame rate, everything like that. So that's kind of my platform of choice when I go for older games. So I'm probably going to go for the extra, and that's only £4 a month on top of kind of what I'm already paying now. I should probably just pay for this year, for PlayStation Plus yearly. It's save money, but I do pay for it monthly, and so it's a kind of £4 increase, which is maybe half what I'd pay if I was going to Game Pass in order to kind of get Game Pass. So that makes it a little bit more attractive. That means that I might not kind of maybe take too much of a mental note about that increase in price because it's only £4 on top of what I'm already paying. I would like to see kind of a list. I think, like you say, about kind of waiting a couple of months now to get anything. It depends. These 400 games out of a catalogue of thousands of PlayStation games could be any old nonsense. I suppose we won't know until kind of that launches. One thing, I mean, I have noticed in maybe some of the dialogue around this coming out is that people are a bit disappointed that it's not more of a competitor to Game Pass, and I think that's maybe making a comparison that isn't really there. I think that this introduction is more of kind of where PlayStation Plus and their kind of premium offerings need to be in the era of downloadable game or streaming or subscription services in general. It's one thing that with the Xbox Game Pass you can pay for Ultimate. I think that's something like £15 a month, and that comes with Xbox Live across PC, and obviously you don't need Xbox Live Gold on PC, but it includes Xbox Live Gold if you're on your Series X, and then it also includes Game Pass. So I think this is just where Sony need to be, and it's not necessarily meant to be kind of an out and out competitor to Game Pass. It's not going to maybe bring people in the same fashion that Game Pass does. And I think we were talking about this earlier, like you were saying before, that Sony have always been very clear that there's not going to be any day one kind of massive Sony first party titles releasing on this service. That's not what this service is for. This service is to increase the value in what people are getting out of the PlayStation Plus service. And I think maybe people expected it to be like that, despite Sony making it very clear. And I think maybe maybe the kind of community, the gaming community, need to realize that Microsoft are a gigantic company. They are worth a hell of a lot more than Sony are, because they obviously provide Windows. They also do all of their Surface tablets, and there's loads of other kind of areas of the company, and that gives the Xbox team a lot more flexibility. That's why Microsoft were able to acquire Activision for $70 billion, because they are, incredibly valuable company, and that means that they have the kind of cash flow to make acquisitions like this possible. But what that also means is that they have the cash flow to take a loss on day one releases in order to make that money back through subscriptions, whereas Sony just don't have that overhead. They don't have the capital to basically say, look, we're going to release God of War Ragnarok, which would sell millions, is very likely to sell millions of copies, and hopefully be well critically well received and is a good game, that is a lot of cash flow revenue off that title, and loads of other Sony first party titles that they can't afford to lose by putting it on a subscription service. Whereas Microsoft have that money to take a loss. It was a bit like when Epic Games first released the Epic Games launcher. Fortnite is such a monster in terms of revenue for that company that they're able to take a loss by basically paying over the odds for exclusivity for a certain amount of time on titles, and kind of, take the hit in terms of revenue in order to move people to that platform. They're always doing £10 coupon codes all of the time and get free games and all sorts that other companies just don't have the ability to do. So yeah, the kind of long and short of it is, I think maybe there should have been more realistic expectations about what this service was meant to achieve, and that I don't necessarily think it can be leveled as a major criticism against Sony. It's like comparing a small, what kind of money could a small local garage pay, in order to bring in revenue over, a massive kind of chain branch of a business. And that goes for all businesses in general. Sony have far less money to spend on things like this than Microsoft do, so you're going to see less of an offering. That's just how it works. So yeah, I mean, what do you think? Have you seen any articles? Have you seen anything, particularly critical of the service? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so just to put in perspective something that you actually just mentioned, so the Epic Games example, I think in 2019 they had a 181 million loss by giving free games away, and it was projected to be bigger losses the subsequent years. But like the amount they made essentially from Fortnite alone, like it's so much. Like I don't think I can find a figure for that, but
it's ridiculous.
There we go. No, Fortnite makes them 400 million a month. So their annual loss for giving away the free games, they've made it back and then some in 1 month. So
yeah,
it's absolutely nothing to them, which is insane.
I think I saw their projections. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I think they said that they didn't see the Epic Games launcher as being profitable for at least another 2 or 3 years. I think towards 2024, 2025, that they would start making money back off the launcher and the storefront. And so that just goes to show that they are able to take that hit in order to bring people to their platform. And where Sony choose to take a hit is in the cost of building the consoles. I mean, I'm not sure on the figures with the PS5 specifically, but certainly with the PS4, they sold at a loss in order to keep the price down. And so I think it's a similar situation with, with the streaming services that they're just not able to take as big of a loss on it. And you might see a lot of titles that aren't particularly exciting, but are there to kind of fill out the catalog in case anybody wants to use them. I think what you'll certainly see is a lot of the titles that are currently on PlayStation Now will obviously come, under the new PlayStation Plus tier. That's a given, I think. So I think there'll still be a decent selection of titles, but I think, I think it's about keeping those expectations in check. And ultimately, if you don't want to pay for that additional tier, then you will be getting a service like you've had with no price hike, which I think is
the same.
which I think is appreciated, definitely.
So Jim Ryan said this week, with regards to the first party title releases, that they believed the approach would hurt the development of Sony's big budget titles, presumably because, like you say, not getting that cash flow. So, and those are the things that PlayStation prides itself on: the God of War, the Horizons, Spider-Man. And
Definitely.
if they don't have the cash to put into those games, like at the time of development, then they're obviously concerned it would affect the quality of them.
Yeah, they very much take the approach of feeding profit back into developing new titles. So instead of taking the cash and kind of running away with it and doing something else, unlike Microsoft, who just have the capital to invest lots in new games, Sony very much take a kind of cyclical financial model where the profits from God of War will go straight back into the studio in order to make the next game, which is just typical of a smaller business. You have to, it takes time before you're making out and out profit that you can put elsewhere. And so I think I agree with Jim there. And all of this is not to say that Game Pass isn't a good service. I do think it is. I've had it for many months on PC, and I've got a lot of use out of it, and I do think it is a good, valuable service. But I think that this is understandable considering Sony's position at the moment. This all makes sense. These new PlayStation Plus tiers.
Yeah.
One thing I did see, which irked me slightly, and we were talking about this earlier in the week, was an article that referenced the complexity of the new tiers, which I just don't see. It talked about how there are now 9 ways to pay for PlayStation Plus, but that's not true in any regard. There are 3 ways to pay, and those 3 ways to pay are ways that have existed for as long as subscription services have existed. As long as billing in general, you could always pay it monthly, quarterly, or over a year. And so the night, I think it took a fairly patronizing tone, and I think maybe kind of underestimating the kind of the intelligence of the video gaming community that they wouldn't be able to understand what 3 different types of payment were over a month, a quarter, or a year.
Those things already existed, as you say, not just for PlayStation Plus, but for pretty much anything you can subscribe to.
Yes, exactly.
And if anything, they've streamlined the subscription services, which were previously a bit more confusing with the Now and the Plus separate.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think there's been maybe a slight bit of, without trying to come off as if we're utter Sony fanboys, there has been perhaps criticism leveled at the service for criticism's sake. Just to come up with something to say, around a new service, which just is typical of kind of modern journalism, is that there needs to be criticism of some regard in order to make sure that it's kind of a false balance. It's almost like you have to deliver some criticism in order to kind of keep things realistic. But yeah, I thought that article in particular was particularly patronizing, and I just don't see the complexity of this service. I think it's pretty straightforward.
It's very simple.
Yeah.
Here's regular PlayStation Plus, pay a bit more, get some more stuff, and pay a bit more to get even more stuff, and that's all there is to it.
That's all there is. Exactly. And that's the same with Netflix. I pay the top tier of Netflix in order to get the Ultra HD 4K stuff, and the kind of multi-platform streaming, so we can watch it upstairs, downstairs, and then everybody else scrounges off it. So that's normally how it works. So I think this is just similar to any other type of service that you'd see, and that I think that there's maybe a greater discussion to be had about the erosion of ownership, and how a lot of the direction that these services are moving towards are essentially eroding the idea of having a kind of out and out paid for access to anything. I think in the era of kind of software licensing, things like that, we're starting to see services aimed more towards maybe the truth about ownership of video games, in that you never truly own them. You own the license, or you essentially rent a license over a certain amount of time, and at any point the developer can say, that's it, we're pulling the game servers offline. There's no more multiplayer, or no more updates. Specifically is one thing that I know particularly kind of Battlefront 2 came into issue with. So I think in the middle of either 2019 or 2020, they said that's it, that's the final kind of support. With we're phasing out support for the title because we're moving on to whatever's next. And then a year or so down the line, they had kind of it was rampant with hackers or cheaters, and there was some sort of bug that was stopping people from playing and enjoying the game. But that had been introduced because updates and security updates and things like that had long since stopped, and people were able to find exploits, and EA were essentially forced to come back to the title, and DICE were forced to come back to the title to rectify it. So we might see more of that kind of going forward, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what the titles are. I mean, Returnal is one thing that I had my eye on, especially with the new kind of co-op update and some new aspects of the game.
It's very hard though.
Yeah, so
I found it hard.
I'm looking forward to being able to play that without the kind of large cost of paying outright for the title. So
it's worth noting as well, which that Returnal, when that service launches, Returnal will have been out roughly a year. So that could potentially be a time frame for PS5 titles joining the service, or it could be less.
Yeah, but I think it may be. I think it possibly depends on how well a title does. Maybe kind of in the past, you might have seen God of War take a little bit longer to get to the service, and then maybe Days Gone, which I enjoyed, but obviously was less critically well received. That might hit the platform, or a bit sooner. So we'll just have to see if the 2 games a month, the 2 monthly games a month. I said monthly games a month. So the 2 games that you get free with PS Plus, we'll have to see if maybe the quality of those kind of goes down in order to maybe incentivize you kind of moving up a tier. So that'll be interesting to see.
I'm expecting nothing good in the lead up to the relaunch, because they'll be saving decent stuff to show off with that, right?
Yeah, they did announce the games for this month, which are Hood, Outlaws and Legends, which is, I believe, a title by is it Sumo Digital?
Looking now.
Yes, it is.
To be honest, I've not heard of this game.
So it wasn't particularly well received, but it was one of the initial kind of PlayStation games that was when first started kind of pushing the console ready for launch. But more importantly, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom is on there. Now, I loved that game when I was younger.
Rehydrated edition.
Yes. So I'll be probably interested in downloading that and giving that a go.
See, I've never played it, and I will admit that I've never really watched or been a fan of SpongeBob in my childhood. Slightly too old for it.
That's it. I'm sorry, everybody, but we are announcing the retirement of the In-Gaming podcast. I'm a huge SpongeBob fan. So I know. I'm very much looking forward to it.
I do keep seeing people say that the game's good, so maybe I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, it was part of that era of licensed, just actually decent licensed platformer games. Like it's just an unoffensive platformer, kind of collect 'em all, kind of go after everything. A bit like the Futurama game. If you remember that.
I don't actually.
Futurama on PS2, I enjoyed that. That was a good cell shaded game. That was just an unoffensive platformer. And then we saw the Simpsons movie game, which I maintain is really, really good, but everybody loves hit and run so much that
I see. I was
wrote
a Simpsons
off
wrestling fan.
Simpsons
That
wrestling.
was smart.
Simpsons Road Rage. That was that crazy kind of Crazy Taxi clone. I played a lot of that growing up. But yeah, we're getting off on a adaptation of family cartoon tangent.
We may well be able to play all these games on the new PlayStation Plus.
Well, there you go. That would be.
It is relevant.
That would be good. If Hit and Run was on that upper tier, then I might be forced. A hand might be forced because I would love to play that game again, sat on the sofa and enjoy that. So I think it's a wait and see. We'll have to see what titles release, but all in all, I think it's a decent offering. Keeping expectations kind of in line with what I expected out of this service. So we'll have to see. Yeah. Anything else in particular that kind of struck you?
No.
Or
no, I think we've covered everything.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So what I wanted to go on to next was a bit of a discussion about kind of the state of open world games at the moment. So this past week, I finished Horizon Forbidden West. We won't be going into any story spoilers or anything like that, so you don't have to worry about pausing the video if you've not played it. But it got me thinking about the state of open world games and possibly becoming jaded with the format, even in its best examples. So obviously they've been, in terms of just personal playing, I've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Elden Ring, Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West, should I say? I'm not. Maybe a couple of others, some of the MMO stuff, but it struck me that perhaps as a whole, in terms of the way that the genre is going, I think I've just become completely worn out by open world games, and it's not to say that there aren't some benefits to it, in kind of the current era of open world games. Elden Ring, from an exploration perspective, I'm really enjoying. I've been playing a lot of that this past week, defeating new bosses, coming across new stuff. And so as an open world game, it's probably among the best. But I think I'm just in need of a traditional linear narrative title, because I think the genre of open world has been done to death at this point. We are inundated almost all the time with collectathons, maps filled with markers of things that you can go and do and tick off. And we've seen a decrease in the amount of just traditional linear titles that are narrative driven and full of kind of more set piece moments. So instead of relying on kind of the open world to provide the set pieces, I want games that kind of have those set piece moments within the title that are, kind of a linear narrative driven. And when you think back over the past couple of years and kind of all the big titles over the past few years, God of War had a bit of an open world light element. It did have a lot of linear narrative stuff, which I really enjoyed, but there certainly were some open world elements. Ghost of Tsushima, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Horizon Forbidden West, a number of others. Dying Light 2. I think, obviously Hogwarts Legacy coming out this year is going to be another open world title. And I think it relates in some way to what we discussed last week, which was game length. And how open world games are almost built to stretch out the amount of time you can spend with a title to the absolute limit. And the only way for me to kind of get that shorter term fix of a title that is really focused and takes me through a story from start to finish is a linear title, is a linear game, more like The Last of Us Part 2, or the original Last of Us as well.
Yeah.
So I would really love to see more of those at the moment. And I feel like we go kind of backwards and forwards between open world games are really good. Oh, I'm a bit tired of them. I want linear games. Oh, I'm a bit tired of them. And kind of, those are the two sorts of type of video game that we do tend to kind of go back and forth and ebb and flow between. And I think I'm getting to kind of the bottom of the curve when it comes to the enjoyment factor that I'm going to get out of an open world game. So Horizon was good. I enjoyed it. I thought it made some decent improvements over the first one, but ultimately it wasn't distinct enough from the gripes that I had with the first game to say this was a title that I if you didn't like the first one, that you'd enjoy. There were elements about the combat or the open world that I again thought I've gone back to the things that I didn't enjoy about the first title. After I'd settled into kind of after the newness of it had kind of fallen away, I was back at square one when it comes to the issues I had with the game. And I know you have been playing Immortals Phoenix Rising. What are your thoughts? How are you feeling about open world titles? Are you still enjoying them, or would you prefer to go back? Kind of in a linear direction.
No, I'm not enjoying them. Yeah. Simply, but so yeah, I recently finished Valhalla, which is probably in the market currently the worst offender for the amount of. I mean, depends how you look at it. You can say there's a lot of content, there's loads to do. If this was the days when, when you're a kid, you only buy one game, it's got to last you a couple of months at a time, maybe that'd be brilliant then in that scenario, but it's not. It's a time when you've got free games left and right, you've got subscriptions, you've got everything all over the place. So much stuff's released every month. So those smaller games are definitely what are appealing to me. And when I was faced with picking a new game out of my backlog, I picked Phoenix because it looked fun, quite light, and I thought, I know it's an open world Ubisoft kind of game, but I was like, you know what? It's not going to be as intense as like Assassin's Creed or whatever, so I'll just go with it. And I do like it. Visually, it's quite visually pleasing. It's quite fun. Gameplay's quite fun. The story and the characters are pretty, it's very enjoyable. But I'm maybe 4 hours in and I've already decided to shelf it for the time being because there's just too much crap and I can't be bothered to do it. Yeah. And I feel like if I don't at least do some of the stuff, I'm missing out. So then I'm not getting a full experience. But also then I also really don't want to do that stuff because I'm just kind of sick of side shit.
Yeah. I'm
actually very tempted to pick up the PS5 version of Uncharted 4, which I have completed before, but just something to a palate cleanse, maybe just run through that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
I agree. I think that's a good choice as well. Cyberpunk as well was one that I didn't mention. That's another collectathon. And I think referring to your point about map markers and how some might say, well, it's more content, you're getting more out of your money that you paid for, but it's hollow content. It's content
Yeah.
designed by algorithm. You know, it doesn't feel like any of these, these collectathon and, go on and go find this treasure, that treasure, go sink this place, that place. It doesn't feel like it was placed there by human hands and kind of
No.
with kind of love and attention, and everything's got a purpose. What it feels like is that that it was, the just randomly there are places in this world that are assigned treasure chests.
I think the problem is, especially with the Ubisoft titles, is the map will be broken up into regions, and every region has one of each kind of side task. So it's very much like you're going to do, say, all the secret chests, just made that up, whatever. There's like one in every area, then there's one of a certain kind of challenge in every area. And that's kind of what makes it feel very artificial, I think.
Yes, yeah, because
it's quite going quite a way back. But when you said about the side quests having meaning, it kind of reminded me of playing The Witcher 3, whereas there was a lot of side stuff in that, but every side quest felt like its own proper story.
Yeah,
and like felt like you actually made a meaningful impact to those characters.
Yes, yeah, I completely agree, and I don't think a game has done that. Even Cyberpunk did not hit that kind of level of meaningful interaction with characters in the world. And yeah, I agree. It'd be split up into sections, and it's repetitive. You know that when you enter a new area, you're going to have a list of things to do that is exactly is the complete equivalent to the last area that you went in. And it's not a case of this area of the world has more treasure chests, this area's got dungeons, this area whatever it might be. Giving you an incentive to go to a region because there's like uniqueness to it. You know that every single region you go in is going to have 10 chests.
Yeah,
go and get them.
You do a bit of a story thing, and then you're left with the same checklist in every area.
Yeah,
climb a thing, open the map up. This is very much aimed at Ubisoft. This bit,
yeah,
it's the same.
It is.
It's Phoenix, it's Assassin's Creed, Far Cry. They've all got the same climb a thing mechanic. Open the map, markers appear, go and get them all. It's the same every time.
And this is a dig at Ubisoft because they set the bar for what open world games were. Ever since beyond Assassin's, it was probably Assassin's Creed 3 maybe. Assassin's Creed 2 had some, and Revelations of Brotherhood had some more open world elements, but kind of 3 and then going on to 4, it became kind of this outdoing each other, outdoing another open world game in terms of how massive it was, how much map there was to go around.
I think it was Unity, the first one I played, where I looked at the map and just went, that's too much stuff.
Yeah. And
prior to that, it was quite fun going and collecting the stuff. But
honestly, that mixed with the kind of buggy aspects and the buggy nature of Assassin's Creed Unity, gave that game a bad reputation. When actually, if you kind of remove all of those elements, it's actually one of the a really good Assassin's Creed game. The kind of world is beautifully detailed. It was shown off, it may be ahead, too ahead of its time. It was it was kind of shown off as being, the next kind of generation of PS4 and Xbox One titles, Assassin's Creed titles.
I've not played it yet, but I actually purchased a disc copy of it fairly recently because apparently if you play it unpatched, you can play it at 60 frames a second on PS5.
You can.
And because PS5 is obviously significantly better in terms of hardware, like don't run into many issues that were present at launch.
Yeah,
because it just can handle the game better.
I think part of it, and I'm not. There might be kind of options for this. I think part of it is the inability to remove some of these elements of the map. I know that you can change it, probably change the kind of what's on there at any given time, but I'm sure that resets every time you kind of go back into the map. If I have an opportunity to turn off everything in the map, I don't want to see glowing orange whenever I press my focus, I want to see the story, and that's it. Then that makes a kind of a difference to my perception of the title. But the fact is that Unity was absolutely covered head to toe in stuff to collect and do, and I think it hampered an otherwise decent Assassin's Creed game. And so Ubisoft are to blame for that, because they set the standard for that kind of open world, go here, collect 10 chests, kind of style of gameplay. And one thing that I think worsened that in Valhalla was the levels of openness of the map. There was so much open space that they could basically add all this stuff everywhere, and it wouldn't feel particularly unnatural, to have loads of different treasure chests hidden in caves across England. And I think maybe with Odyssey and Origins, we've just gone too big, and it makes each individual place within the game feel less special, because it feels like maybe not as much time has been spent on making this place unique, making my experience in this place unique, around England, whether it was Lincoln or Canterbury or what have you. They were just hollow husks within which story elements took place. And I would love to go back to something like Unity, where it's smaller map, but the detail is real. There's really granular detail. You can feel that love and passion has been poured into every brick in this, in this space.
Like one big city with a huge focus on it.
Yeah, and that's what made Syndicate feel, more special to me as somebody from London. There are elements of the space that I recognise greatly and have fond memories of kind of being in, Hyde Park or kind of near Buckingham Palace, and I'm sure everybody's been there, but that gave it more of a personal connection than just England. Like I said last week, there was nice elements of familiarity, and the place that we both lived for quite some time has its own marker, which is weird because it's kind of nice. a small town, and it's nice, but it was just a tower, and kind of on the cliff edge.
I'd love to hear the perspective from, say, someone in another country on Valhalla, because I've personally enjoyed Odyssey and Origins a lot more because of the interesting exotic settings as well.
Yeah,
ancient Greece, ancient Egypt are way more fascinating to me than like Viking Britain.
Yeah.
But someone who doesn't live in England or in the UK, is this interesting? I don't know.
Well, I've heard kind of people talking about Valhalla and also specifically Forza Horizon 4, which also took place in the UK, had Edinburgh, had kind of it didn't go all the way down to, there was no London in it, but it had various other kind of small villages. People saying it's nice to look at, but there's nothing outstanding to the world, and that I think sums up the UK. You can probably sum up the UK in kind of a shrug, kind of. There's not, there are elements of places around the UK that are phenomenal to look at and and to go to, but they are maybe not as plentiful as when it took place in Australia, or in Forza Horizon 5 in Mexico, and with Assassin's Creed, in Greece, which was just absolutely stunning space to play in. I really enjoyed the kind of the throwback to more Black Flag elements of gameplay in terms of the ship, the ship elements, and sailing off into the distance, to kind of going through storms in order to finally reach the shores of Mykonos, or wherever it might be. Yeah, like you said.
Point as well is, from what you've just said, is if you're going to spend a lot of hours in an open world, it needs to be aesthetically pleasing. So, as you just mentioned, Odyssey was like stunning to look at. It was most of the time there was bright sun, everything looked like really nice. You had the big open seas, which looked brilliant when you're sailing on them.
Yeah.
And Valhalla, you've got a lot of green fields, and that's largely it.
Which is not unlike the UK.
No, it's accurate.
Covered in, yeah. Nobody can deny that it looks like England. It's just whether that's a good thing or not.
Exactly.
Which some diehard Anglophobes and Anglophiles.
I mean, it gets to a point where I'm wandering around the open world in Valhalla just looking for random crap. And I'm like, I could just be going for an actual walk just outside. It's a better experience.
Yes. I've done the drive between Pickering and Scarborough. And I can tell you that it's actually far nicer in real life than it is in Valhalla. And that's one thing, obviously we live up north, and the Yorkshire areas of York or, wherever it might be, are covered in snow. And that's it. It's almost like you cross from the Midlands into the north, and suddenly you're in the wastelands of Siberia. It's just snow everywhere. And I don't know whether that's like that, that might be just an American interpretation or, Canadian interpretation of the North. They've been watching too much Game of Thrones, is what the issue is.
Which, is supposedly based on Britain geographically a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But no, I think, so as far as I can recall, the part of the game which takes place in that area is meant to be in winter, the story part, so that's why that's like that. But it doesn't really make sense when afterwards, every time you go back, it's just
cold, and snowy, which, as people who live in the north, does happen from time to time. But we do have
briefly, though.
Yes, exactly. So, like I say, one thing that I'm sure Americans maybe have the same problem with games set in America that have a very maybe neutral American accent that isn't specific to any one place. One thing I will never forgive Ubisoft for is the awful accents in their games. They are abysmal, right? There are some maybe leading characters that are British, but aside from that, I'm hearing Americans. I'm hearing people doing awful impressions of English people. The Isle of Skye expansion, there was not a single Scottish voice.
No,
at all. Which I thought, if I was a Scot playing that, and I was going, we're going to go to the Isle of Skye. You get there, and everybody speaks in a Southern English accent. You go,
and then they went way overboard with the Welsh.
Yeah,
in which they made them. I think intentionally they made them so you couldn't understand what they were saying, which is way too. I mean,
and I remember that specific mission. The subtitles say unintelligible. Whenever she speaks, whenever she speaks well, instead of just making the translation and putting it in there, it just says unintelligible. And so, it's a very weird kind of approximation. And Watch Dogs Legion committed the worst accent crimes. The accents in that game were just, I don't have the words. As somebody from London, they were appalling. And I can tell when an accent, you as English people, we can tell when an accent is fake. Just like I'm sure Americans can tell if that if some Brits are putting on a bad American accent, or United States accent, wherever it might be within there. But Watch Dogs Legion, just hearing people in the background going, "You numpty," or calling people just very weird like slang that really is not particularly.
I do tend to find though that when American actors portray British voices and accents, it sounds terrible, but there's quite a lot of. I mean, I'm talking like Hollywood here, but high-profile British actors, who have no problem sounding American.
No, and I remember
Tom Holland jumps to mind as a recent person who's been successful.
Yeah, and I remember Idris Elba when he originally auditioned for The Wire. They were shocked and astounded to find out that he wasn't American and he was actually British. And I think maybe kind of the elements of kind of English accents being generally fairly flat probably aids in putting on different accents, whereas Americans, they're a bit more kind of flowing and maybe it's more difficult. And I don't know whether it was that a veiled attempt to maybe criticize Oscar Isaac's English accent in the Moon Knight trailer, which I'm not seen the show yet.
Me either. So.
But if the accent is anything like the trailer, I'm just going to have to plug my ears whenever he's talking, because it's not particularly, it's a very over exaggerated London accent, calling people "you donut" and all these sorts of things.
What, from Oscar Isaac?
Yeah. I mean, just based on the trailer.
I didn't even realize the character was he's not meant to be British, is he?
In the television adaptation, he is. Yeah.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah. And I was watching it. I mean, as a kind of tangent, I was watching an interview with him, and he said that none of it was filmed in the UK. Absolutely none of it, despite a lot of it being set in the UK. None of it was filmed in the UK. So just like we tend to be a go-to for faking American scenes, like in the Batman, it seems they're happy to do that in other places in the world and fake the UK.
I've just read something. I was questioning this, and so apparently he's actually not. He's meant to be American. He's in the show American, but there's the whole thing. He's got multiple sort of personalities. One of them is British. That's why.
That's why. Yes. Yeah.
But apparently,
hopefully that personality doesn't appear much.
It says. Isaac said, when he was required to put on a London English accent, he said apparently it's intentionally bizarre and unconvincing.
Oh, okay, so as part of the character,
yeah. He was inspired by Carl Pilkington in An Idiot Abroad. Right.
Okay. I've just completely swapped my opinion. Oscar Isaac should win all the awards, and what an amazing actor! I would never have. I know that obviously Ricky Gervais is probably well known in America, but I would never have picked Carl Pilkington. Although, funnily, Carl Pilkington is from the Northwest, so he's not a particular. He's not a particularly good, kind of inspiration to go off if you want a London English accent, because Carl Pilkington is not from. Where is he from specifically?
Maybe it's just the ridiculousness of him, which he's going for.
He's from Sale, so that is South Manchester.
I think anyone's from Sale.
Yeah, no, me neither.
For anyone who's not lived around the Manchester area, that is a place near Manchester, which you've probably never heard of if you've not lived.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I wouldn't have, kind of ridiculous. Pegged him as an inspiration for the show. But anyway, yeah, we got off on a massive tangent there. But essentially, Ubisoft games hire English actors to do voice acting. Remote work is easier than it's ever been. You've no excuse. But yeah, I think it's just open worlds in general. I would like to see some titles arriving soon, and that's why I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. had stopped playing that for a bit, but it's just nice to play a game where I know that I'm moving forward in one direction, and I'm not having to go off on a tangent. Find other stuff. There are pseudo open world elements in that some of the times between missions when you're heading over in a new direction, you can, there are other elements of the neighborhood that you can explore, but it's by no means an open world, and it's just nice. And so I think in terms of my backlog, that might be where I go next in terms of finding some games to cross off my list. I think it will be some more linear titles. Have you played The Last of Us Part 2?
No.
Well,
I've got it. I have a copy of it.
That's a 60 FPS now on PS5. So that is
just what I was waiting for.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, especially with Assassin's Creed, especially with The Last of Us Part 2, that really helped a lot. The 60 FPS. It just made it feel a little bit less kind of clunky in terms of it, in terms of the gameplay mechanics. So that's the direction I think I'll be heading in when it comes to crossing off my backlog.
Yeah, I think I need to do the same really, because, like I said, a bit of a palate cleanse.
Yeah,
and I think a good thing to do, which I started doing, is, if you're familiar with the website How Long to Beat.
Yes, yeah.
So it'll tell you how long the story is, how long it is with some extras, and how long for like full completionist run. And if the difference between completionist and main story is huge, this probably should be a red flag.
Yes.
As an example, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and this isn't including any of the DLC or expansions. The main story itself, it says, takes 59 hours, which is insane.
Yeah, that's spot on, because that's how long it took.
But completionist is 135 hours, which means it more than doubles the time by doing the extra stuff
in order to collect everything else. Yeah,
that's not including any of the expansions, which is not a wonder. It's ruined our enjoyment of open world games for the time being.
No, I think I think I'm going to be moving in a different direction when it comes to kind of what my I might keep. Like I've said, getting back into kind of Final Fantasy 14, and I have been playing kind of off and on a bit of Fallout New Vegas and also Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium, has kind of some elements of being able to move around the space, but it's more of kind of a linear direction. But I think very much that'll be kind of direction I'm moving in for the time being, just because I need games that I know I'm going to be able to get through in a reasonable amount of time, and it's not going to feel like a chore to kind of keep rolling with them. I mean, as far as new releases coming out kind of over the next couple of months, the new Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga is out. The Lego games have always had slight elements of like with some other titles, a bigger kind of open space. But they very much are. You go through and you're kind of tackling a final enemy, final boss fight, and you move on to the next bit. So that might be a nice, like palette, like you say, palette cleanser, for the time being. Then there's not really much else out for some time over the summer. We're looking
a lot of games which I haven't heard of the majority of them. I think they're kind of, a lot of them are just kind of big in Japan kind of titles.
Yeah. Like yeah. There's just not much coming out. We've just seen so many delays, and that's one thing. That's another delay of the week. That will be this new section, delay of the week. Breath of the Wild 2, not the final title, has been now delayed until spring 2023. Which, given that is another large open world game, that's fine. I'm happy to wait longer for that. And then aside from that, like I say, Lego Star Wars Sniper Elite 5 comes out on the 26th of May. They're always normally a pretty good blast, so might keep an eye on that. And then I think that's pretty much it over the summer. So we'll start to see the kind of post summer, fall, autumn kind of release schedule. So that at least is good. Some of these delays have left large gaps through which to kind of tackle a backlog. To get through some of these titles,
and whatever comes with the revitalized PS Plus as well.
Yeah.
And
yes,
then,
exactly. So, and that I think is probably good that when that drops in June, that'll probably offer up a lot of these kind of linear narrative titles that maybe I haven't got around to. So in that situation, that it gives me an opportunity to play those. Yeah. So I think that kind of covers everything. I know I talked about Horizon Forbidden West at the start. All in all, it was a good game. I enjoyed the kind of the narrative, but like I say, after I got over the newness, I started to realize that some of the gripes I had with the first title were still there, and therefore I just kind of got that out of the way. Not to say that it's a bad game, and if you loved the first one, then you'll really enjoy this one. So not a bad game at all. So I think I'll probably be carrying on with Final Fantasy VII Remake and get that completed, get that knocked off the list, and then
I think I think I'm going to be maybe like I said, have a crack at Uncharted. Last of Us 2 is probably a good time to play that, and I've got Death Stranding sitting around as well still. So it's kind of a big open thing, but it's not really in the same way as
no. Yeah, it's very much a. It's very much open. Yeah. It's the open world elements, but it's it's not a click on the map and go and collect everything in order to progress.
Which, to be clear, that's what we have an issue with, because exploring is actually a positive in games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we can talk. I can talk about Elden Ring till the end of time, because that is a game where no elements of the open world feel hollow, feel lacking in kind of personal detail or kind of the love and passion.
You know what I think it is,
though,
with Elden Ring, is they haven't gone, let's make an open world game. They've gone, we've already got another fairly done to death formula with Soulsborne. What can we add to it to make it different? And open world was that thing.
Yes.
And they've probably naturally expanded into that instead of setting out to make an open world game in the vein of the other ones.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of maybe going from the direction of let's make an open world game with Souls elements, they've gone, let's take Souls elements and let's push them to where they naturally, need to go. And
that's expanded on their model.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what Elden Ring feels like. And so that's why it is kind of, an outlier amongst all of these kind of open world titles. Because I click on the map and I don't see, all I see are sites of Lost Grace that I can go to. And
so
kind of caves.
I look at the map and I actually see a map. And I talked to an NPC who I found randomly because they're not, well, they are on the map when you found them now. But find a guy, dude was disguised as a tree. Turned out some weird thing was going on. You found that guy?
Yeah.
And he talks about, I've lost something, it's in a cave somewhere. And he doesn't give you anything else other than that. So I look at the map and I can see there's what looks like a picture of a cave type structure not too far from where we are. So I'm going to go there and see if that's what it is.
Yeah.
I used the map as a map.
So did you find what he was looking for?
Potentially, I'm still at the boss in that area, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'll find out shortly.
I have done that, so I won't spoil anything about it. Yeah, enjoy that. That's the thing. It's just finding those things and enjoying them. I'm not going there to knock a trophy off. Get another trophy. And there are people who are trophy hunters that enjoy that element of games and kind of collecting everything. But I have never, and I don't know we could probably talk about this in more detail in another episode. But I've never been a kind of platinum hunter. I think I've maybe got a couple of platinums, and what I think they are. I think they're the Telltale games where you get platinums for completing the story. That's it.
I've got a fair few, but they're always when I come to at the end of the game and I see there's only a few trophies left to get it, and I'm like, well, I might as well.
Yeah.
Admittedly, so that has happened with a few open world kind of games. The two spring to mind are Horizon Zero Dawn and first Spider-Man game, both of which I completed the story. I'd done a lot of stuff along the way, and it was like, okay, it's going to take me like half an hour max to tie this up, so I might as well.
Yeah. I mean that's a good point. Spider-Man is a game where I didn't feel that much of that fatigue because swinging through the world is so fun.
It never got old, did it?
It never got old, and so I was happy to go to the next place and collect whatever because it was just gave me an excuse to swing around Manhattan, and I will always love doing that.
And so, the place was listed with like familiar sites and references to the comics, and there's just around every corner there was something interesting. You're like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, and I think the same was with Batman. The Batman Arkham series because I loved hooking onto something, flying off, and then gliding down into wherever it might be. So I'll be really excited to see what Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad do with kind of their open world, and hopefully then I don't kind of get any fatigue out of those. But they're coming later this year for Gotham Knights and early next year, so I might be back in the swing of open world games. I might love them again by then, but don't suppose I know at the moment.
Craving it. Maybe we just need different open world games.
Yeah,
that don't follow the same formula.
Ubisoft formula, yes, which is probably a formula that has lasted far longer than maybe anybody expected or wanted it to. So we'll have to see. But yeah, that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to talk about when it comes to open world games. We'll have to, I'll take a break and hopefully come back refreshed when the next thing drops that's open world, and not as fatigued by them.
I think it's worth mentioning that how common an issue this is just to pull the curtain back a bit. We always have like a little chat before we start recording.
Yeah.
And independent of each other, we both turned up today and said we want to talk about open world fatigue.
Yeah, we did.
And we've not discussed this before today at all.
Yeah.
And both came wanting to vent about.
Yeah, both knew that this is
accurate.
That both knew that this was how we were feeling about them, and so yeah, I'm hoping to take a break, and I think the MMO that Final Fantasy 14 is something that I'm looking to play will fill in that longer term, that maybe in the midterm kind of gap, for the time being. So we'll have to see. But yeah, that kind of covers everything that I wanted to talk about when it comes to open world games. Anything else you wanted to share?
No, I think we've talked about it enough.
Yes, I don't
like to put it to rest.
I'm fatigued by them, and therefore I don't want to
talking about
one more minute about them. Yes, yeah, definitely. Right, well, I think that's everything from me for this week. Have you got anything else that you wanted to share before we sign off?
No, that's me. I'm good.
Yeah. Yes, so we'll be back again next week. Remember, 7 p.m. UK time. So if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe. Pop a comment down below what you thought. Be sure to catch us over on Twitter at InGaming Podcast as well. If you've got any feedback, anything you want to share, or if you've got any questions that you want us to answer in a future episode. I am now looking forward to heading back into Final Fantasy VII, looking to get that ticked off my list. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the day. Anything for you? You back on Destiny? Anything like that today?
I actually took a break from Destiny because I just need. Not there's anything wrong with it. I just wanted to put some time into getting some games. My big backlog finished.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to pick out some, as we've discussed, some narrative-driven kind of linear-ish games to play later today and over the next week.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll talk about any of those that we do come across in a future episode. So, with that being said, I think that's everything from us for this week. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we look forward to seeing you next week as well. So, it's goodbye from me.
Bye from me.
Goodbye.